All right, so being curious. That leads us to this idea of emotional intelligence. Does anybody know what emotional intelligence is? All right.
You said, do we know what it is?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at work, we talk about it.
Huh.
It's an ability to, well, to understand another person's perspective, to find a way to work with that person. So it's contrasted with somebody who might have very high IQ, but doesn't like react in a way and doesn't see what the other person needs or wants and be able to adjust their behavior for that. So it's kind of in our company we look at emotional intelligence and IQ as being equally important.
Yeah. When did you start talking about this?
Well, 6, 7 years ago, I should say, my company.
And yet fairly recently, like 6 or 7 years in the grand scheme of things, is fairly recent.
Yeah.
And so you're dead on. Emotional intelligence is 3 things. The ability to identify, the ability to appropriately express, and then the ability to manage or resolve feelings, emotions. So it's actually a relatively new field of study. It actually only started being studied in the early 90s. I think 1992 was the first time they published a study around emotional intelligence. And what you're speaking to is exactly what they discovered is that, yes, you can have a brilliant mind academically and just have all this IQ knowledge. But if you have a low emotional intelligence, when somebody says no, or your plan doesn't go the way you want it to go or whatever, all that emotional intelligence kind of goes out the window because you're having an emotional explosion that doesn't allow you to access the academic knowledge that you possess. And so what they started to do is train this. And arguably, it's shown up in kind of the millennial generation. Why people have started talking about it in the last 6 or 7 years is because they're finding the young workforce is less resilient to no. Like you have bosses, old bosses, they're like, no. And the young worker has a meltdown. It's like, what the hell happened? Like, what's the big deal? And so arguably what we're finding is our everybody wins, blue ribbon kind of parenting style for this generation of kids has actually created a problem in the workforce. So now they've started teaching this in schools, which is great because we do want kids to have emotional intelligence and it's the ability to manage their feelings. This one gets kids sent to SUWS. This is what the kids do. Maybe they can identify it, but if they appropriately express their anxiety, their depression, their anger, their frustration, if they appropriately express that to you, you wouldn't be sitting here. You wouldn't. Instead, they punch holes in the wall, melt down, lock themselves in a room, cut, do drugs, whatever. All those are inappropriate expressions. This one is where parents struggle. So, what we're trying to do is teach kids, and sometimes parents, the ability to have higher levels of emotional intelligence. Parents struggle here because oftentimes we feel like every feeling can be resolved. We're just gonna sit down, you and me, we're gonna sit down and have a conversation. We're gonna resolve this out. You're gonna say some things, I'm gonna say some things. It's gonna be a nice back and forth. You're gonna understand my perspective. I'll have a little bit better understanding, but you're really gonna understand my perspective, and we're gonna have resolution. It's not how it works. Many feelings don't have resolution. You know? I'll pick on you guys for a little while. So, he can always be upset that you're divorced. There's no resolution to that. I don't necessarily think you guys are going to get remarried, so it's kind of like that would be the resolution. That's never going to happen, so there's no resolution. So what's he left with? He's got to learn how to manage the feeling. Sometimes a parent's deceased. It's like, mom's never coming back. Dad's never coming back. You can't resolve that feeling. You can manage it. I think about my dad, it's like, all right, he's got dementia. I lost a whole big part of him. And it's like, I can still be sad, and yet I can manage the feeling and kind of move on with my life. And so sometimes we're trying to drive this here. We're trying to teach SUWS students how to manage their feelings. It doesn't have to get to a resolution. And oftentimes parents are super invested in sitting down and working everything out to a resolution. It's not how it works. So lighten up on that one in a sense. Now, can this be taught? Absolutely. It can be taught. So yesterday, I went around the room. How do you feel? How do you feel? How do you feel? We do that all day long with SUWS kids. Step number 1, identify your feelings. We talked about the page that was in the book that just lists the feeling words. It's in there to help you guys expand your vocabulary, because I want you to expand your vocabulary with your kids. What are emotional words that can be expanded? So, make copies of the thing. Put it up in the kitchen. Put it in the car. Whoever, wherever. It doesn't really matter. But the ability to start identifying just a larger vocabulary of emotional words. Then how do you express it? Fab statements. We teach kids fab statements here. We teach you fab statements. Fab statements are one way of expressing. It's not the only way of expressing emotion. So some kids we have are just that physical kid. They just need the physical release. And they're not going to sit there and give me a fab statement until they can physically get it out first. So, throwing rocks. That could be a very appropriate expression. You can't throw rocks at any building, car, or anybody else, but you can go try and hit my fish with rocks. Go ahead. Throw 100 rocks in my pond. For other kids at home, maybe it's the heavy bag. I'm a big fan. Get your kid a heavy punching bag. I'm also a fan, so the little guy likes to slap the older brother on the butt and harass him. So maybe it's the little guy needs a little bag, and he gets to put his brother's picture on the heavy bag. And he can punch the picture of the bag, If he's punching a picture, that's a lot better than actually punching the kid. So, okay. Yeah, which is better than stabbing his brother. We're in a step in the right direction. So that, sometimes the expression, again, not punching holes in the wall, but punching a bag, it's very appropriate. So working towards ways, and what we do out here with your kids is work towards ways of, using a fab is phenomenal, but there's other ways. As long as you appropriately express how you feel, that's what we're interested in. So let's figure out what works for you, kid, on how do you express yourself. And then yes, if that is a physical release, you still then have to come back and verbally share with your parents or your teammates or your camping group how you feel. You got to go one step farther than just the physical. You then have to come back and be like, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. That's why I was throwing the rocks, or whatever it is. All right? Now, for parents, I do want you to kind of step out, but you can teach this. This is basically setting you up to teach problem solving, right? So, you're an inventory control manager. Again, we talked about problem solving. You're a construction crew, again, solving problems. You're a banker. Your whole thing is taking somebody's problem and fixing it, creating a solution. So you're all problem solvers, and you're all great problem solvers. You do it every day. You all have made the drive from Asheville to Old Fort. You've seen Old Fort. You look down at your gas gauge. It's oh, I need gas. As you pass Black Mountain, problem, we need gas. You start to identify possible solutions. I can go to Old Fort and get gas, or I can go to Black Mountain. You identify potential pitfalls. I've seen Old Fort. There may not be a gas station in Old Fort, so I better get off. And you get off in Black Mountain and you solve the problem. You do it all the time on a subconscious level so quick. Where did you learn how to solve problems?
I have no idea. Probably years, as a kid, I can't remember. It's probably at school.
All right.
You literally solve problems, because you're solving maths problems.
Okay, so there's 3 ways of learning. School, that's basically the lecture. You learn by example.
Making mistakes.
Sure. So you learn by example, and then you also learn by experience, which is the making mistakes. So those are there's many learning styles, depending on your school of thought, 14, 17 learning styles, but there's 3 ways to basically learn. As parents, you can no longer use the lecture. Junior's not listening. You can still use it with the 8 and 11-year-old. They're probably still engaged. Maybe the other non-SUWS kid, you can still use the lecture. But your SUWS kid, they're not interested in your lectures. If you literally start a phrase ever with, when I was your age, you might as well punch yourself in the face, because they're not listening at that point. They're just not. You all are stellar examples of how to live life. So keep living a good life. Like, don't stop being a good example, so keep doing that one. Now, we got to talk about the experience. So, we're going to let Junior experience stuff. Again, parents have great intentions, and sometimes we misfire in the execution. Less and less kids know how to ride a bike at SUWS of the Carolinas. Why? Because we don't want our kids to get hurt. Makes sense. I don't want my kid to end up in the ER, whatever. So I don't necessarily teach them how to ride a bike, but I rob them from the experience of what you can learn through the struggle of learning how to ride a bike. So we got to let them struggle. That's a whole lot of what SUWS is. I'm sure you all have heard of fire, starting fire. It's a big event for all the kids to get through at the beginning, starting fire. If I really wanted your kids to start a fire, I'd give them a lighter. It's not about starting the fire. It's about getting bloody knuckles, breaking their nails, and getting really pissed off and starting a fire with a flint and steel, because it's hard. And very few kids come in as Davy Crockett and can light a fire right away. It just doesn't happen. So we got to let them experience it. So how do you teach problem solving to kids? We are putting the training wheels back on. Teach problem solving. And this is straight out of the Love and Logic stuff. If you've listened to the CDs, we're a big fan of that group. The reason we give you the CDs and all that stuff is because we're a big fan of what they do. Some of the examples are a little hokey. I know that. Like, when the phone rings during dinner and you reach it, it's on the wall. It's like, buddy, whose freaking phone is on the wall at this point? Like, it doesn't happen that way anymore. So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, on this tape, you will hear like, really? Tape? What? What's a tape? So I know he's a little hokey. And some of his like, gee, Dad, that would be swell. I know it doesn't work that way. So we're kind of adapting it into how it works for the tough nugget. Your kids, your SUWS kids. The spicy kids. But teaching problem solving is a thing that we do over and over and over with your kids. And the first thing we want, every problem is their problem. Every single one. They're emotionally overwhelmed by how they're feeling. It's their problem. They're not going to school. Their problem. They're doing drugs. Their problem. Whatever it is, she wants to cut, her problem. Everything is their problem. To a point. And we're going to talk about what that point is, because that's where kids are going to push you to that point repeatedly. But every single time that you have the opportunity to teach problem solving, you want to do it. And this is one of the ways that we want you to do it. So one, help them identify the problem. So how do you do that? What's the first thing that you do to identify the problem?
Ask them how to do it.
Okay, and something's going to happen before you can ask a question. You got to do something else first.
Pay attention.
Listen. So yesterday I said the most important thing is listen. They're not going to come home and be like, hey, Dad, I'm really kind of overwhelmed. What's he going to do for you?
Throw his book back down.
Yeah. Like, what the hell? School sucked. And you're like, woof. All right. How do I reflect that? I hear, son, that school sucked. And you're going to help them identify the problem. It appears that you're really overwhelmed at school. Like, they're going to come home and unload on you. Or they may isolate, depending, unload can be passive aggressive. Walk through, not even talk to you, walk through the room, slam the door, climb in their bed, and not come out for 4 days. And it's like, what? Like, that's pretty aggressive in a passive sort of way. So they're going to verbally vomit onto you or emotionally vomit onto you. And so the first thing you do is you listen. And you help them identify a problem. It appears that you have a problem at school. Yeah? Or it appears you're upset with your mother. Or it appears that you're overwhelmed. You're not saying this is what it is. You're saying it appears this. It seems to be this way. You're helping them identify the problem. Step 2, you hand it back. So you identified school as a problem. It is a common experience for me to hear families talk about school with SUWS. Let's pretend Junior has to take the school bus, or should be taking the school bus to school. the school bus comes at, say, 7 o'clock. Junior roughly has to get up an hour ahead of time to kind of get themselves together, get out the door, and make the school bus. So we're talking about a 6 a.m. wake-up call. 6 a.m., alarm goes off. How long do you wait before you go in?
I actually wake them up.
Oh, so you've just given up on the alarm at this point. And I'm not saying that this happens, but let's pretend, we'll be generous and say you wait 10 minutes after they should. Hey, buddy, how are you? Hope you slept well. Oh, you have some good dreams? Okay, let's get going. All right, come on, it's time to wake up. More often than not, parents, I'm not saying you, but parents maybe wait 5, 10 minutes before they come back to the room. And maybe you don't make it all the way to bed. Maybe you just come into the room at this point. All right, buddy, hope you slept well. Come on now. You maybe wait 5 more minutes. Now you're in the door frame. You're farther away. Okay, we got to get going. Come on. We got to get going. Now we're at like 6:20. If you have stairs, maybe you're halfway up the stairs. Okay, let's get going. Come on now. 6:30 rolls around. You're at the bottom of the stairs. All right, get up. Come on. 6:45. You maybe didn't even make it out of the kitchen. Get your ass up. Get down here. 7 o'clock, you know the bus just passed. And now you're pissed because now you got to drive Junior to school. And you're literally farther and louder from Junior. Whose problem is that? Whose problem? Yeah. Because who's pissed? Yeah, who is pissed at this point? You not only have to take time out of your day, but who's worked up? You. What's Junior doing? Yeah, he probably using their noise-canceling headphones that you gave him for the holidays last year and enjoying his sleep. Like, whoa, this is great. So what they just did is took their problem, getting to school and making the school bus, and made it your problem. It was brilliant on their part. We need to flip that back. So, and again, I'm not saying that happens to this group, but it is a common experience with kids at SUWS. So we've identified the problem, now we hand it back. And you have to use specific language. Hey, it appeared that you were having a hard day at school today. You want to talk about it? And you kind of solicit like what's going on for them. What do you think you're going to do about it? You use the phrase, you. What are you going to do about it? And that way you're handing it back. It appears that like we got your drug test back and you failed. What do you think you're going to do about that? You know? You got an F in Spanish. What do you think you're going to do about that? And you hand it back to them. Then you help them identify solutions. Right? What do you think you're going to do about it? That's opening up the idea. But before you can offer any solutions, you have to ask a question. What do you have to ask? Would you like some ideas? And you're giving them a choice. Yes or no? Before you start offering all your brilliant solutions, you have to ask their permission. You can't offer them without their permission, because if you do, you're giving them that coded message of you're an idiot. Let me just tell you how to do this. That's not what Junior wants to feel. That's not what you want Junior to feel. So you ask permission. Would you like some ideas? Junior then has agency. Everybody has agency. Yes or no? Junior may say no. If they say no, you punch out. You come back in at the end, but for now you punch out. If they say, yeah, you know what? I'm open to some ideas, Dad. Then what do? You offer ideas, but you don't couch them in, this is what I did. When I was your age, nobody's listening. Nobody's listening. You can say the same thing, just attribute it to somebody else. Well, your brother did this, your cousin did that. Say the same, whatever solution you were going to say, just give the credit to somebody else. That kid down the street, that weird kid at SUWS that I met, this is what they did. You know, who knows? Just don't say I. As soon as you say I, they don't want to be you. They'll figure that out when they're 30. I'm like, wow, I'm a lot like my parents, and it's not so bad. But as a 16-year-old, you sure as hell don't want to be your mom. Moms, I'm sorry. Teenage years are rougher for you guys. No matter what gender kid you have, girls don't want to be their moms and boys don't want to be mama's boys. Moms get dumped on from both sides. Sorry, it's harder to be a mom for an adolescent. Woo! All right, so you help them identify solutions. Then you identify pitfalls. And when I say you identify pitfalls, I mean you ask them a question. Do you see any potential problems with that? You don't identify the pitfalls. Oh, yeah, I failed my Spanish class. Yeah, my solution is go tell Mrs. Smith she's an idiot. You see any potential problems with that? No? All right. I look forward to hearing about
That's one way to do it.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing about how that works out for you. But you don't identify the problems. What you're trying to do is train this. We're not invested in the task. We're not necessarily invested in the outcome. What we're trying to train is the problem-solving technique, because that's what they need. Because after they leave your world, after they leave your little orbit, whether that's going to school as a teenager or literally leaving your house, they need a system to solve problems, because life is a series of problems. The problems aren't going to stop. Their dog's going to get run over by the bus. The love of their life is going to break their heart. Somebody is going to ask him to do some drugs. Somebody's going to ask him to do something stupid. They're going to need to make money. He's going to need to kind of figure out how to be a functioning person to make money when GameStop doesn't hire him because he's not the cream of the crop because he didn't graduate high school. Like, who knows? So the idea is they need to learn to solve problems. So this is what you're teaching over and over and over.
So how do you do this with a kid who just doesn't care about anything and says they don't care? Because this is kind of how we got to the GameStop thing. Like, you're not going to school, I don't mean, what are you going to do when they kick you out for excessive absences? Well, I don't care.
Right, so let me walk through this, and then I'm coming after that. I will come there, but I want to get through this first. All right, so you have identified pitfalls, then you follow up. And so this arrow should have been here. But even if they say, no, I don't want your ideas, you always have to follow up. How'd that work out for you? And that may be 2-3 days later. Hey, you remember, you're going to go tell Mrs. Smith she's an idiot? How'd that work out for you? And it's not this big, long, processing thing. Hey, I just want to know how'd that work out for you. There may be things that they don't follow through. They're presenting this bravado. I'm going to, drop out of school. Oh, how'd that work out for you? Well, I didn't really do that. They're going to present a whole lot of bravado that they may not follow through with, and you just want to ask the question, how'd that work out for you? Because you want them to process. You as problem solvers do this all the time, even in your head on a subconscious. After you solve a problem, you probably look at it, it's like, I probably could have done that better. I should have done that, man. You do it on such a subconscious, rapid level as a functioning adult. You're just training it. That's all you're doing. And so we want to do this all the time. Now, Junior's going to create a series of problems that you may not feel comfortable with. And this is where every single one of you has a different level of comfort. 14 and not going to school is different than 17.8 and not going to school. Doing drugs. It's the great American conversation right now. What's our level of comfort with smoking pot? Every family is going to have different experiences on, are we comfortable with Junior smoking pot? Are we not comfortable? And so you have to figure that out for yourself. Going to school. Sometimes it's like, hey, Sean, I'm willing to let the kid miss the bus, but our neighborhood, there's no way for them to get to school outside of me. Other than that, it's like, there's no Uber, the street's too busy to drive or walk or ride a bike. And so every one of you is going to have these unique situations, so you will be forced to solve some of their problems. There is a family that I'm very familiar with who showed up, their kid was 21 years old. They weren't a student at SUWS, but they were 21 years old. And I'd love to find out how school went for kids. When I'm going to get engaged with them, I want to know how school is, because it's such a common activity for everybody. Mom realized that Junior wasn't making the bus. Solved the problem. Got Junior in the car, drove him to school. She then realized that Junior was getting out of the car. She puts the car in park. Junior hops out, walking towards the front of the school. Junior didn't quite make it into the school building because his buddies are over there. Mom figured that problem out, solved the problem. Parked the car and cart, hopped out, dragged his little butt, basically pushed him into the front of the building. All right, he's in. Problem solved. Junior didn't quite make it to the first period of class. He was in the building, but he didn't actually go to class. Mom figured that problem out, solved that one too. She brought him to, like, literally walked him through high school to his first period class. Then realized that he wasn't paying attention in class. She solved that problem. She got a chair in the classroom, took notes for him in the classroom, got all his assignments for him, then realized that he was coming home and not doing his homework. So she sat with him and did his homework with him. Her intention was he was going to get an education. It's brilliant. We all want our kids to be educated. We do. Want him to go to good college. So she did all his studying with him. She did all his test prep with him. Time to apply for colleges. He got into a great college. You know how he got into a great college? Mom filled out all the applications. Mom wrote the essays. They showed up in my world after he was in college. Because you know what was happening? He wasn't going to class. Mom figured that problem out and solved that problem. What'd she do? Bought a condo right down the street. Would go to the dorm, wake him up, drag him to class. So my point is, this is an extreme example. I was like, are you friggin' kidding me? It's an extreme example, but I understand what her intention was. She wanted her kid. We all know that if our kids get educated, doors open for them. And she wanted all the best for her son. So she was doing that. But she inadvertently was just solving all his problems and not teaching him how to solve his problems. And it's like, when does it stop? And so that's a question, because you are going to be forced to solve problems. You're going to watch your kids create problems that you don't necessarily want them to solve. Somebody's got drug charges. Who's got drug charges? Drug charges. So, you know, I've had a parent in here, it's like, my kid's got felony possession, felony distribution, and felony whatever, drug charges. And he crossed state lines, so they were federal offenses. And he's like, are you telling me I should just let Junior ride? I'm like, well, you know, you could go the public defender route, or you may want to get a better lawyer to see if he can help his cause. At that point, Dad solved his problem by getting a better lawyer in a sense. Not that public defenders are bad lawyers, but the idea, like, he paid for a better opportunity for his son. Your kids are going to push you over and over and over into positions where you're going to jump in and solve their problems. But I want you to do it consciously, not subconsciously. When you recognize that you are consciously solving their problem, I want you to stop and be like, all right, when does this stop? How far are we willing to go? And is there a way that we can shift this to his problem? So in that case, Dad paid for the lawyer, but then it's like, all right, Junior, like, you got to figure out how to pay me back. And so tried to shift some of the financial burden into his problem to solve this. So, young Mr. Durant won't go to school.
Yeah, so last year, between January and the end of school, he missed probably over 25 days.
Yep.
Not counting hospitalization.
Yep.
Yeah, and I know he's not a senior in high school, but
Yep.
yeah, though in his contract for being released from the hospital, and when he was in August, September, it was like one of the requirements is you have to attend school.
Mhm.
If you do not attend school, I will assume you are telling me that you need more help than you can receive in the home, and you will be making the choice to go somewhere. I think he thought we were bluffing.
Most SUWS kids, that's a common experience. Like, I never thought my parents would actually follow through.
Yeah, Lance
Like,
said
what the
the drive
hell?
up here, Lance brought him, that he was fine the whole way, and then when they pulled in, he was like, oh,
You're serious.
you're not just taking me for a 3-hour tour, too. But yeah, and so he's in 9th grade, and I mean, it's like, how's that gonna look? I don't think he understands that if he fails 9th grade, that is not going to
Open doors.
Yeah, and he just said, I don't care.
Mhm.
I don't care.
Mhm.
And he doesn't have the perspective to see that you need some grades in 9th grade. You need to not fail 9th grade, but he just is sticking to this I don't care, whether it's being obstinate, his depression, his anxiety, a combination of all, I don't know.
Mhm.
There's no currency with him.
Mm-hmm. So I want to go a couple of different routes here. So if he fails the 9th grade, what's that matter to you?
In which respect? Because there are different ways. Like, it doesn't matter personally to me, other than as a parent, you want to give your child the best opportunities. And so I do feel like if I cannot get my child to school, I have failed him in some way by him having this blemish on his record that maybe, I don't know how it will impact his future, you know, maybe he'll get a good college essay out of this. Maybe, I don't know, his GameStop application, I don't know. But it matters to me because you want the best for your kids, and you see that he's doing something so unbelievably stupid.
Right.
He's not incapable of going to school, he has just decided he's not.
Yep.
And
So how can you make, so I totally agree with you. Like, I want my kids to go to school and all this stuff. And it's like, if I can't get him to school, but literally, how can you make him go to
oh,
school?
I can't. That's why he's here.
220 pounds.
Right.
Yeah, I can't make him. I can't bribe him.
Yep.
There's no, I can't.
Right. So he is pushing you in a position. So, like, literally, you were left with, am I going to drag him by the ear and shove him in the car? And it's like, well, your intention's for him to get educated. So even if you got him there, is he doing the work?
Yeah, and you know, when he's at school, his teachers love him. They say he has such good comments in the discussion, and he's a joy to have in class. And there's no like conflict at home because I've decided it's not a battle. For the last 2 weeks, every morning, are you going to go to school today? Nope. Okay. And you know. And so there was no conflict because I would resign myself to this is where he's heading. He's heading out of the house. Every day he's making my decision easier to get rid of it. I mean, really, that's how I viewed it. You're not going to school today? All right. I'll get to work and fill out some applications and gather up all the paperwork. You're making it easier. Then, like the day before he came, we went to a psychiatrist for an appointment. He wasn't going to go. Then he finally went, and I was like, "Are you going to go to school afterwards?" And at first he had told me he would, and then he got mad at me for something. I wouldn't take him to GameStop. And he was like, well, you can take me to school because I said I would go to school, but I'm just going to hang out in the bathroom all day. And I was like, no, we'll just go home. He's like, no, I told you I would go to school. Take me. I'm going to sit in the bathroom. I was like, that doesn't count as going to school. So we just came home, and then I told Lance tomorrow he's leaving.
So I did a lot of that with William for like 2 or 3 years, I think. Remember when he was living with you, I'd come around in the morning and and it's just exhausting. And I think, you know, though in my view, this is just the stupidest thing he could do and makes me very angry that he won't go to school. I have kind of got to the point, and that he's not going to graduate on time, he's probably not going to go to university, all these things that I had. I'm past the point now of actually, I don't want to put any more effort into fighting this thing. It's just not, I'm not winning. And I know you say we shouldn't be winning,
Right.
but I'm not winning in this thing, and I'm the one who's exhausted. And ultimately, he's the one who's going to have to live with it taking 2 more years to get his, you know, and you know, there's a weird, you almost have to trust them more than you want to. Trust them in the sense that they will at some point work out that this is a bad idea, or that they need to go this way rather than that way, and stop trying to get in the, you just can't, you're just exhausting yourself. And you have to believe in some way that this kid that you've kind of shaped and molded a lot will get to the right place at the right time. It's not now. And you're never going to, you're just not going to get there. You know, and I think I realised that, I think it was this last year, because he was, like I said, he started the school year off really well. And then he just quit. And every single, I mean, I tried so many different ways to persuade, you know, punish everything, get, you know, help from this, from that. You know, any one of them should have worked, and none of them did. So at some point you're like, well, there really isn't anything that I can do that's going to make this happen. And so the only person who's sitting there and, you know, not thinking about my other kid, not thinking about all the other things I should be thinking about is me. And he's just kind of goofing off. Doesn't care. Fuck you, Dad. So, I mean, I don't know, and maybe it is that I'm trying to make it his problem again, but I know I'm done with making it mine. And I never thought I'd get there. I really didn't, because it pisses me off so much.
Yeah,
I'm so angry with him for this, but I'm not going to keep fighting
it's great. And so what you're just speaking to, like you're literally giving me goosebumps. Like I'm so proud of you. I feel so proud of you right now. But it's in the sense of understanding without this class, you understood I don't have any control and all I'm doing is being held hostage and my life is miserable trying to have this fight where I can't win. And I'm fine using the phrase, but it's like I can't get the desired outcome. And the only one that's exhausted in this is me. And so if I do different things to take care of me, you actually show up differently as a parent. And though that may look crazy because you're backing off with the school thing, it's like I'm backing off here, but it gives you the energy and the emotional awareness to then re-engage with him in different ways. It's actually brilliant. So, I mean, I'm really proud of you for doing that because there's a point of like, I can't do anymore. You're literally held hostage. And you're not going to win. You're never going to get them to school. And so it comes down.
So we feel better that we've disengaged, we've walked away. It's not about them, it's about us. We got that. But like, our job as parents is to have our children go forward, good citizens of the earth, be honest, hopefully go to school. Maybe I just don't believe in the trust part.
But like Durant.
Maybe I re-engage in this relationship as 80%, whatever. I struggle with when he comes home. Is he gonna go to school?
Is he going to
Like, what the
continue
hell
to
you
not
doing?
see that as a problem? Because
Mhm.
currently he wasn't seeing that. And he's really sensitive when his friends move on to 10th grade without him. Like that will crush him because he is a sensitive guy. Like he's probably too sensitive is probably one of the reasons he has trouble dealing with all of his feelings because he takes things to heart. He's very.
But maybe that becomes the motivating factor when his friends go on and he doesn't. Maybe that's the motivating fire that he needs to make a difference.
He's told us, if I don't, this was last year in 8th grade when I was like, you've missed too many days, you might not pass. He's like, well, I'll just kill myself or run away. Like that is how he will say he'll deal with the problem. And that's sad.
It is.
That's not an appropriate response. But he doesn't see any pitfalls to either of those because to him, those are appropriate because that will alleviate the stress and the anxiety and the problem. So.
And so to coming to your point, like Lance, absolutely, yes, your job is to help educate them, help get them prepared for the rest of their life, to make good decisions, to be parts of humanity, like a productive part of humanity. And ultimately, like, again, with school, you may be forced to a position where you're dragging him to school, but please know, that's not actually getting your desired outcome of educating him. That's not doing anything.
Like the social worker who's on my case, she's like, well, we can have a police officer come and get him. And I was like, do you understand that if you have a police officer come get him one day, that is the only way he will ever go to school again? I'm not having a police officer come get him. That's not a wise use of public resources. It's like, because then that will become his ritual. That is what we're doing. All right, where's the cop? I'll go to school now. And no, that's not reasonable. To me, that seems stupid.
And so your kids are going to continually push you to your position of like, I'm not comfortable with that, or I am comfortable with that. And so, some parents have, called the police on their kids for acting out. Other parents are like, no, I'm not doing that. Other parents have called police for, having drugs in the house. Other parents are like, I'm not doing that. Like you all are going to have that level of comfort that you have. One, knowing the resources in your area, and one, knowing your own personal interaction of kind of what you feel comfortable with as doing as parents. But you may never get him to school, and it's not
How is
your...
trusting him to go to school different than giving up? That's what I feel.
He's such a smart kid. Like of all three of our kids, we love all our kids, but like he is super smart. He's the one that has so much. I mean, they all have potential, but like he's really, I just hate to see him not engaging and being, inspired and just. I don't know.
It's breaking your heart, which is then But then I'm saying that's your job, is you go work on you. It is your heart that's breaking. Yes, I know it's for him, but you're the one that's suffering. You go to your therapist and work through that. That's yours. Because your kids may not choose the outcomes that you want them to have. They may not do that.
I just don't feel like he appreciates the consequences of his decisions.
So how's he going to learn to appreciate the consequences of his decisions?
Right now, I don't feel like he ever is.
Well, SUWS is a pretty big consequence of his decisions.
I mean, if he's still being obstinate and, you know, causing problems after 3 weeks here, I mean, I really thought he would break by now, but.
And generally between week 3 and 4 is when kids really engage at SUWS. Generally like a strong-willed kid generally will go till week 3, 3.5.
Like,
No, but he's strong-willed.
yeah.
He's strong-willed. Like it's a great quality that he has. It's a pain in the ass to be a parent to, but it's a great quality. So I just want you to recognize that he's going to continue to push you, and you may never get him to school. And then you have to learn that, like, where do I show up? Where does that really affect you? And it breaks your heart because he may not have the doors open that you want him to have open, or he may have to learn how to get them a different way when he's 22, 23, 24. It's like, oh, I should have done it a different way.
Yeah, just knowing how he reacts to things, though, it's just, oh, well, he has a thing, so when he was doing his psychological testing, at home, the lady was like, I've never seen anyone like this in 30 years. Like, he was doing he filled in a wrong answer, and he immediately knew it was wrong. He didn't say, can I erase it? He said, that's it, I'm done, I messed up, it's,
All or nothing.
yeah, and I don't know, that's just,
Which is he is gonna continually challenge your sense of control. And so,
but no, for him to see if something's ruined, if one little thing goes wrong, then the entire endeavor, whatever he's doing, then it's just a waste of time and he quits. With one mistake, he just shuts down. That's not an effective way to navigate the world because things are always going wrong.
which is teaching him emotional intelligence. And so seeking his perspective instead of telling him coming in is like, no, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Slow down a little bit.
Well, so one night at home, he got upset. He's like, well, I'm going to sleep outside tonight. And I said, well, Durant, it was like, I don't remember how I phrased it. He said, I know I'm going to be a wreck tomorrow, but I have to sleep outside because I've made that decision. So he was like, I know I'm going to be exhausted and I'm probably not going to go to school, but I've said I'm going to sleep outside on the ground, so I am going to sleep outside on the ground.
So what'd you do?
I was like, knock yourself out. I went back inside. It was
Great.
raining, turned off the lights.
It's great.
Yeah,
So
but what I'm saying, like, the point is that, like, someone who can say, yes, this is gonna suck, and it's gonna be awful tomorrow, but I made the decision, and I'm sticking with it, knowing the consequences are bad.
Some people navigate the world that way. They really do.
Yeah.
Like, you all have watched your kids make some really bad choices. You're like, this is going to make your life harder, kid.
But it's one thing when
And
the
they-
child acknowledges that and continues.
Yep. So
I don't know what to do.
continue to take care of yourself. That's what I'm asking you to do. Continually take care of yourself and go after the relationship rather than trying to convince him his perspective is wrong, his perspective is going to do all this. Like, just go after caring for yourself and work on the relationship. And he's going to probably continually choose the hard road in life. It's what he's going to do.
Yeah. I have a good relationship with him.
Great. So keep going. All right. So teaching problems. And again, so you're going to find yourself solving some of their problems. And just ask yourself, when does it stop? But you want to do this over and over and over. They don't want to eat dinner, it's their problem. You know, they don't want to come out of the room, their problem. As much as you can find it a way to teach it. Again, you're trying to teach the process. That's what you're after. Because they need a process.